Let's get down to knife safety and cutting. So every station will have a cutting board, NT cutter, which has a razor blade on it, as well as a pair of scissors or multiple scissors depending. And depending on the size that you're cutting and the intricacy of your cutting, you can cut the paper with the NT cutter or scissors. It really depends on you and your preference and your comfort level. When you get down to the smaller sections, something like this, I would recommend using a pair of scissors instead of the cutter. You run the risk if you use the razor blade, you're getting really close to your fingertips to be able to brace that material. And there's you're increasing the odds of something frustrating, something bad happening. You can do this. This isn't something that's like completely, utterly dangerous, but understanding that it might be easier with smaller pieces, especially when you get into these fine detail things, you might want to use a pair of scissors. When you use a pair of scissors for this, you're gonna wanna rotate the material as well as the scissors. You're gonna be kind of working together. You start on the one side, and then as you're cutting, you're slowly cutting and rotating the material along the cutting path of those scissors. And that's a really easy way to clean up the edge. Same thing here, you have a pretty big movement around this. So if you come in here with a pair of scissors, you start, normally with scissors, towards the base is gonna be a sharper set. And you'll just slowly work this as you are cutting. You wanna be rotating the material. I would rotate the scissors less and the material more. And there's your next layer. If you have a larger system still, you can totally use the NT cutter if you would like. To do that, you're gonna wanna brace. Now there's a lot of intricate motions here, and you have a chance that if you're working through this, you might pull towards your hand, which is an easy way with a razor blade to give yourself a pretty good cut. Remember, our safety rules are always going to be to put pressure into the mat, so the mat is making sure it stops the blade. And then as you're doing this, you can rotate the material, rotate the NT cutter. You can rotate the material, you can rotate the cutter. You don't have to start on one edge. I would encourage you to work always from the inside out and work it in chunks. So like for me, I'll come up here, I'm gonna rotate down and around. I'm always gonna grip in the black, and that allows me to rotate the cutting head as well as the paper around these really tight spaces. As you notice, my finger doesn't get down here underneath the blade. It's always off to the side, providing support. That blade moves, and as that starts to crinkle that paper, I can always move that paper, readjust, and that blade will flow. As long as I'm pulling away from my body, I'm gonna readjust my hands as I'm moving that, and that will clear that space really cleanly. Hey, so when you're cutting using the CT, when you're cutting and you're using the NT cutter, work around always away from your finger. You can totally adjust your point of contact. The paper moves. And then these little spots here that are kind of kickouts, this can totally be the top or the crown of, or the knob of a hill. You can also draw lines and kind of make this into a slope or into kind of a finger ridge. That would work as well. So I think I'm gonna make this at the top of the hill here, or the top of that knob, before I finish this layer out. And this whole thing will get removed and replaced, and then that'll be our next piece to cut. For the piece we just removed in this small little piece here, I would, instead of using the CT cutter, I would totally use a pair of scissors for that. You're just not going to be able to, you're going to get your fingers cut if you get too tight into there. When transferring onto cardboard, I'd use a pen or a pencil. And don't be afraid to use the scraps. Fine, if you're using these small pieces, don't trace it onto the big chunk where you're gonna waste a lot of cardboard. Find a scrap that's not gonna be useful anywhere else. Transfer those on so that you can get these things cut out and transferred into the right location, but you're not wasting all the different material. The same thing would go for the larger pieces. You're gonna use multiple large sheets. Some of these large sheets you're gonna be able to find multiple uses for and just keep reducing your waste loads so that you don't have that excess material that's just gonna go in the trash later on in the project. Always make sure to have the pieces you need to keep held together. If you lose these, it's really hard to replace them. So make sure you don't lose those, they don't drop on the ground. We'll have a bag for those. And then when you cut the cardboard, remember remember two things. One, start with the smallest sections first, and then apply gentle pressure to start with as you go through. So you're not gonna be able to cut through this the whole piece at the first go around. You're gonna wanna make sure you take multiple cuts. If you do try to force your way through, sometimes you're gonna get chunks or you're gonna compress the material and it won't have a great finished product. Again, you have a chance, like if I was cutting towards myself and I was coming up and around, I'd be cutting back towards my hand, and that's a negative, Ghost Rider. Please do not ever cut towards your hand. If you notice yourself doing that, right yourself really quickly. It's completely okay to rotate that material, rotate the blade away so that when you're making that cut, it's a safe cut. You're pulling away from yourself, so it's not towards your body and it's not towards your partner's body. Again, starting on the edge, starting from the edge doesn't always work. Sometimes that'll push down and compress it. I like to start from the center of the cut, work my way outwards one direction. I'll even make the whole cut. So I'll do a couple passes here to make sure it goes all the way through the cardboard. You'll start feeling, once you hit the cutting sheet, you'll start feeling a little bit smoother of a pull. And then again, reorient your material and cut through the other side, always cutting away from yourself. 2 to 3 passes is the norm to get those cut. Fast forward to the 6th layer of the map, and we're almost done with most of the map. It really depends on your topography and what location you choose. With this being Sherwood, down here we have the Willamette River, and that was kind of our first layer. And then you move into Wilsonville. You have some low spots. I-5 kind of cuts up along here. You have some low spots along Wilsonville up into Sherwood. Sherwood kind of wraps around here in this knob. You have the Tualatin Wildlife Refuge over here, and then Tualatin over in the kind of this general area. Anywho, so this kind of gives you that baseline of where that is. You have the Tualatin River Valley that kind of moves through here, and it'll meander all the way down until it reaches the confluence between the Willamette River and the Tualatin Valley and the Tualatin River. So once you get to this point, then you're really solely focused on really intricate topography moving up the landscape. Our goal is to have 15 to 17 layers. If you end up having a few more, that's awesome. We don't want to go below 15. 15 is the minimum. I'd love to see more than 15. But that kind of gives you a general idea, and we'll have a second. I'll fast forward here in a minute when we get the whole thing completed. But you can really start seeing the topography and the land motion. You start seeing some of the shadowing that provides you with elevation change. You have gentle slopes. You have sharper, steeper slopes depending on the hillside. So I'm really excited to see this portion here form up because we're going to have some really steep angles, which if we were to put this to our topography maps that we've been using, that's 50, 60, 70 feet of elevation gain in a really, really tight window. So I'm excited to see what the end product looks like and how it represents Sherwood.